Candace Owens stepped onto Howard University's stage to expose what she called the Democratic plantation. But when she called Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett a token, the auditorium fell silent. What followed wasn't a shouting match. It was a public dissection. Owens brought slogans, Crockett brought facts. And by the end, even her own fans couldn't defend her. What happened? Before we get to this explosive moment, tell us where you're watching from. And if you believe truth still matters, hit subscribe. We've got another jaw-dropping story coming tomorrow. Under the blazing lights of Howard University's historic auditorium, the air was thick with anticipation. Over 2,500 people packed into the Grand Hall. Students, professors, media, and political observers from across the country. As soon as cameras panned across the electric crowd, broadcasting live, the marquee event, a head-to-head debate between Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and conservative firebrand Candace Owens. But what happened that night would shake the internet and American politics to its core. Candace Owens was first to speak. Dressed in a bold red blazer, she strode across the stage like a general entering battle. Grabbing the mic, she bypassed the moderator's introduction and launched straight into attack mode. "This school teaches black victimhood," she declared, sweeping her arm across the audience. "And Jasmine Crockett is here to keep you docile." Gasps. Audible gasps. Boos. Some students rose to their feet in protest. Others began recording, phones raised high. Faculty members exchanged alarmed glances. Candace smirked. She'd gotten the reaction she wanted. But Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch. She calmly stepped to her podium, waited for silence, and leaned toward her mic. "Ms. Owens," she said, voice smooth and steady, "I didn't come here to be liked. I came to be honest, and you're not ready for that." The crowd froze. No shouting, no raised voice, just that surgical tone, calm, practiced, lethal. It was the kind of moment that doesn't just trend. It rewrites the rules. Owens blinked, but said nothing. Crockett just stood there, the slightest smile on her face, like a storm was coming, and she was already dry. The clip would explode across TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube within the hour. But what happened next was what truly shocked America. Candace Owens didn't rise quietly. She exploded into the public eye with the fire of someone determined to disrupt the narrative. A black woman from Stamford, Connecticut, Owens defied expectations from the start. She didn't just question liberal orthodoxy, she made a career out of demolishing it in full view of the internet. Her early videos railing against so-called Democratic plantations went viral. Her mantra was simple: Black Americans are being lied to, and she was here to expose the truth. With each new platform, her influence multiplied. Twitter, YouTube, podcasts, everywhere she spoke, millions listened. Owens knew how to craft a soundbite, how to provoke, how to weaponize controversy. She became a conservative media darling and joined the Daily Wire, where she hosted a talk show designed to shake liberal sensibilities. Her specialty? Confrontation, calling out what she saw as hypocrisy in black political leadership. Her go-to line: "They're not helping you, they're hurting you." The more she said it, the more it stuck. Candace cast herself as the one who escaped, the one who woke up, and people rewarded her for it. Speaking tours, book deals, cable news hits, her name became synonymous with the new face of the Republican movement. One not afraid of identity politics because she redefined identity on her own terms. But Owens' approach had a flaw, one she couldn't see. She mistook reaction for relevance. The louder the boos, the more convinced she was of her success. She didn't debate to persuade, she debated to provoke. And while that strategy made her famous, it didn't make her right. That blind spot, the idea that applause from the opposition means you're over the target, would become her Achilles heel. Jasmine Crockett couldn't have been more different. She didn't start on a debate stage. She started in courtrooms, dimly lit, underfunded, and often hostile. As a public defender in Texas, she didn't fight with tweets, she fought with facts. She fought for people society had forgotten, single moms arrested for minor infractions, teenagers caught in the grip of a biased system, Elderly black men stopped without cause. For 10 years, she defended the defenseless, not because it was glamorous, but because it was right. Crockett knew what injustice looked like up close. It didn't wear a red or blue label. It wore a badge. It wore a robe. It wore systems built over generations to make some people disposable. Her courtroom strategy was simple: stay calm, stay factual, stay focused. And it worked. Her reputation grew. Judges respected her. Opposing attorneys dreaded her. Clients trusted her. When she finally ran for Congress, it wasn't on charisma or cable appearances. It was on track record. She knocked doors. She held town halls. She didn't promise the moon. She promised to show up. And when she got to Washington, she kept showing up. On the House Oversight Committee, she became known for her sharp mind and sharper comebacks. She didn't raise her voice, but she raised eyebrows every time she opened her mouth. The contrast between Crockett and Owens couldn't have been starker. One built her power in courtrooms. The other built it online. One dealt with real lives. The other dealt with soundbites. One sought justice. The other sought attention. And when the Howard University debate was announced, that contrast became the main event. To Owens, Howard was enemy territory, a liberal black institution filled with what she called indoctrinated minds. She saw the invitation as an opportunity to prove that she could walk into the belly of the beast and dominate. She didn't just accept the debate. She promoted it for weeks. She called it her Daniel in the lion's den moment, comparing herself to a biblical figure surrounded by enemies. Her podcast team even hired a documentary crew to follow her, from hair and makeup to post-debate dinner. Her plan was simple: rattle Crockett early, call out the Democratic Party as a failure, and frame herself as the only brave truth-teller in the room. She expected applause for her courage, boos she could frame as fear, and maybe a clip or two that would go viral on X. But Jasmine Crockett was not there for soundbites. For her, the debate wasn't about Candace. It wasn't even about herself. It was about showing up for the next generation, students who needed to see what it looked like to lead with facts instead of fear. Howard wasn't just a venue to her. It was sacred ground. She'd studied law there, walked those halls, learned how to fight without losing her soul. She wasn't going there to argue. She was going there to educate. In the days before the debate, Crockett didn't hire a film crew. She reviewed Owens' public statements, her policy positions, or lack thereof. She printed out transcripts. She color-coded her tabs. She annotated statistics. She spoke to local organizers and former professors. Her team built a war room of research. And yet, Crockett wasn't preparing to win a moment. She was preparing to tell the truth. Not about herself. About the communities both women claimed to care about. About what policies actually work and which ones just sound good in podcast studios. About what black political leadership should look like in 2024 and beyond. In Owens's mind, the battle was already won. She imagined herself walking off stage to cheers, having dismantled another Democrat puppet. But Crockett wasn't playing by those rules. She wasn't there to win applause. She was there to redefine what winning looked like. As the night approached, the energy shifted. Students buzzed with excitement. Faculty whispered about what was at stake. CNN prepped cameras. Producers readied their commercial breaks. The crowd didn't know it yet, but they weren't about to watch a debate. They were about to witness a dismantling, slow, methodical, and unforgettable. And at the center of it all were two women. One in red, walking in with a plan to provoke. The other in black, carrying the weight of preparation, purpose, and something Owens didn't have: truth. Moderator Abby Phillip had barely finished welcoming the crowd when Candace Owens seized the microphone like a weapon. Her tone was sharp, rehearsed, and full of fire. "Let's get one thing straight," she said, striding across the stage in her red blazer. "I'm not here to make friends with the liberal elite. I'm here to expose the biggest scam ever sold to Black America. And that scam is Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett." Gasps rippled through the auditorium. Some students booed. Others lifted their phones, already sensing something historic was about to unfold. But Jasmine Crockett, she didn't flinch. She uncapped her pen and calmly began jotting something down on her notepad. Her expression was unreadable. Owens pressed harder. The modern-day overseers aren't wearing whips, she spat. They're wearing congressional pins. And Miss Crockett is at the front of that line. A loyal servant to white liberals who throw her scraps in exchange for selling out her community. Candace Owens wasn't rattled yet. In fact, she saw the audience's reaction as an opportunity. Shifting gears, she leaned into her next offensive like a prosecutor before a jury. The poverty rate in black communities, Owens declared, has barely changed in 60 years. Detroit, Baltimore, Chicago, all Democrat-run, all failing. And what does Congresswoman Crockett do? She votes for more welfare, more government handouts, more dependency. Some conservative attendees clapped. A few shouted, "Tell it!" But the majority of students looked skeptical, not outraged, curious, engaged. Phones came out again, but not to record. This time, they were Googling. Owens, sensing momentum, flipped through her notes. "You want facts? Here are facts," she said. Baltimore has one of the highest per capita education budgets in America, but some of the worst results. Chicago's South Side, still struggling. And Detroit? A ghost town of broken promises, all run by Democrats like Miss Crockett. Jasmine didn't interrupt. She let Owens finish. Then, she stood and quietly adjusted her microphone. "Let's actually talk about facts," she said. "Not 10-year-old headlines cherry-picked for outrage." She pulled out her own binder. Detroit, under Democratic Mayor Mike Duggan, just saw its first population growth in decades. Violent crime is down. Small business growth is up. The room got quieter. Baltimore, she continued, has made significant gains in education access. But you failed to mention that Republican Governor Larry Hogan vetoed over $2 billion, 0 cents in school funding, leaving students in the cold, literally. Students began murmuring, screens lit up, tweets flew. And Chicago, Crockett said, was gutted by Reagan economic policies that incentivized outsourcing and disinvestment in black neighborhoods. That history didn't start when Democrats got elected. It started when jobs were stripped away and never came back. Owens tried to interject, but Crockett raised a hand gently. "Miss Owens, you don't have to lie to make a point. But when you do, I will be here, with receipts." A wave of applause broke out. Some students stood up. And Owens, for the first time that night, she looked like someone realizing the room was no longer hers. The room recoiled. Professors in the front rows shifted uncomfortably. A student audibly whispered, "Did she just say that?" But Crockett remained composed. She waited. She let the air hang heavy. Then, slowly, she leaned into her microphone. "Ms. Owens," she said, her voice calm but slicing, "your plantation rhetoric says more about your audience than it does about me." The crowd stirred. Crockett's tone wasn't defensive. It was deliberate, restrained, precise. Owens grinned, mistaking that composure for weakness. But for anyone paying attention, that line was the warning shot. Not the climax, but the signal that Crockett wasn't playing Owens' game. Instead of biting at the bait, Crockett flipped her notepad closed and said, "I didn't come here to perform for social media. I came to speak truth to power. If you're allergic to that, you might want to step off this stage." Owens blinked. That wasn't in her playbook. Candace Owens paused. Her smile was tighter now, her voice slightly elevated. The economic data battle hadn't gone her way. She needed a new angle. So she did what she'd always done best. Go personal. "At least I'm not taking checks from George Soros and radical left groups like you," Owens snapped. "How much did they pay you to be their token?" The room went still. Several students gasped. A professor near the front shook his head in disbelief. Even Abby Phillip glanced up from her notes, sensing they'd just crossed a threshold. Crockett didn't blink. She leaned forward into the microphone and asked softly, "Miss Owens, would you mind repeating that?" Candace hesitated, but she'd already gone too far. "I said you're a token, bought and paid for by white liberals." Jasmine Crockett let the silence hang, her calm now razor-sharp. "You know who paid me?" she said, voice firm. "My community. The single moms in Dallas who trusted me to fight for safer neighborhoods. The wrongfully incarcerated brothers who didn't have a voice until I walked into court. You know who paid you?" She looked directly at Owens. "The people who profit from keeping our people divided." Gasps rippled through the auditorium. "And let's talk about being bought," Crockett continued, standing now. "In 2015, you ran a blog that called Donald Trump a sexual predator and a danger to women. In 2017, you flipped and turned yourself into his loudest cheerleader. What changed, Miss Owens? Did your values evolve, or did the checks just get bigger?" Owens stammered. "No," Crockett interrupted, her tone calm but cutting. "Grifters change. Real leaders grow. You sold your outrage to the highest bidder. And now you come here, to Howard University, calling me a token?" The crowd erupted in thunderous applause. Some booed Owens. Others rose to their feet for Crockett. Owens looked around, gripping her mic. But this time, no zinger came. No comeback. She'd launched the most personal attack of the night, and it had completely backfired. Candace Owens wasn't just interrupting. She was provoking. Every word she flung across the stage was laced with disdain. "You're a pawn," she said, pointing at Jasmine Crockett. "Another Democratic tool parading around as if you're helping the black community." The crowd stirred. Some murmured in agreement. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. But Crockett didn't flinch. Her hands rested calmly on her notes. No frown, no defensiveness, just calculation. She looked up slowly. "I fight for kids you've never seen," Crockett said, her voice measured and even. "Because your world is Twitter and mine is real life." Owens scoffed and leaned forward. "You mean your world is bureaucracy and victimhood?" Crockett didn't take the bait. Instead, she turned to the audience. "Let me tell you a story," she said, locking eyes with the front row. "A 15-year-old girl, no father, addicted mother, charged with assault for fighting off a man who cornered her in a parking lot. The state wanted to throw her into juvenile detention for 9 months. I stopped that. You call that victimhood? I call that justice." Owens crossed her arms. "And what about the families of victims of black-on-black crime? Why aren't you defending them?" "I do, every day," Crockett answered. "But I also recognize who creates the environments where those crimes happen. You speak of crime like it's disconnected from policy, like it's just a flaw in our skin. I look at poverty, food deserts, over-policing, underfunded schools, and how the justice system punishes survival." The crowd was growing quiet, attentive. Crockett continued. "You say I use my courtroom experience as a shield. No. It's a sword. I use it to carve truth out of systems built to erase it." Owens jumped back in. "Truth? Your party loves emotion over truth." Crockett finally turned back to her. "No, Miss Owens. We love people. You love provocation. That's the difference." The moderator tried to move the segment along, but the energy had shifted. The students weren't reacting with laughter or jeers anymore. They were leaning forward, phones in hand, tweeting quotes and reactions in real time. Crockett didn't need to shout. Her presence was doing the heavy lifting. Her calm dismantled the chaos Owens brought with her. She closed with this. "I've been in courtrooms defending girls you wouldn't dare mention on your show. I've seen the things you reduce to hashtags, and I carry their stories with me, not for clout, but for change." The applause started slow, then spread. Owens looked stunned. The debate wasn't over, but the direction had turned. This was the flip's beginning, and everyone in that room knew it. Candace Owens leaned in, her voice tinged with disdain. "You're not fooling anyone, Congresswoman. Your whole act, this outrage, these talking points, it's not about justice, it's about fame. You don't serve the people, you serve your profile." There was a flicker of agreement in the crowd. Perhaps some weren't sure yet who held the upper hand. Owens had always known how to throw the first punch. But what she didn't anticipate was that Jasmine Crockett had come prepared, not just to absorb hits, but to land them with precision. Crockett didn't flinch. She reached calmly for a thin binder at her side, flipped it open, and laid it flat on the podium in front of her. No theatrics, just facts. "I hear this a lot," Crockett said evenly. "That I'm doing this for attention. That when I defend people, when I question power, it's somehow about me. Let's be clear. I didn't get here because of celebrity. I got here because I showed up, over and over again. In courtrooms, in neighborhoods, in committee hearings where nobody was watching." Owens interrupted with a scoff. "Sounds rehearsed." Crockett turned to her. "No, it's recorded. Congressional record, trial transcripts. Real stories." She turned back to the audience and continued. "In 1927, the Supreme Court ruled in McGrain v. Daugherty. That case confirmed Congress's authority to investigate, to gather facts in service of legislation. That's not clout chasing. That's oversight. That's constitutional duty." Owens' expression tensed slightly, but Crockett was just getting started. "You accuse me of chasing cameras, but I remember representing a 15-year-old girl in Dallas, arrested during a traffic stop where she wasn't even the driver. I remember being the only person in court who believed her story. I remember the judge's silence. That silence changed me." Crockett's voice didn't rise. It settled deeper. "You call what I do branding. I call it survival. I wasn't born on a stage. I was raised in courtrooms that didn't care about my client's zip code or their mother's accent, or whether they had shoes that matched. I ran for Congress because someone had to bring those stories into rooms like this one." The crowd began nodding. Some clapped quietly. Then Crockett delivered the line that reset the tone of the entire night. "You perform for applause. I prepare for impact." Gasps, then cheers. Owens folded her arms. But the shift was already complete. Crockett wasn't defending herself. She was defending purpose. And purpose was winning. The lights in the auditorium dimmed ever so slightly as Jasmine Crockett leaned forward into the microphone. Her expression didn't change, but the silence in the room signaled that something monumental was about to be said. Her voice, calm and exact, sliced through the tension. "Candace, I don't need to yell. I don't need to go viral. I came here to speak truth in a room full of future leaders who deserve more than theatrics." Owens smirked, trying to pivot. "You're the reason Democrats can't keep the black vote," she said, with her voice rising. "You sell hope while delivering nothing." Crockett remained unbothered. She adjusted her notes and looked straight at the moderator before continuing. "Let's talk about what's real. You've never passed a law. You've never defended someone in court. But you've sure been paid to play a character." The audience gasped. Phones were lifted. Live streams lit up with hearts and flames. And then Crockett delivered the line that broke the internet. "They don't love you for what you say. They love that you say it while being black, because it lets them off the hook." The room erupted. Students stood up. Even faculty had their hands covering their mouths. The moment didn't go viral because it was a zinger. It went viral because it told a painful, rarely admitted truth. Owens froze. For the first time in the debate, her mouth opened without a sound. She blinked quickly, her usual composure lost in the gravity of what had just been said. Crockett's eyes didn't flinch. The moderator tried to move on, but the room was still reeling. TikTok clips were already circulating. "She said it," one tweet read. "The thing we all knew but never dared say on national television." But Crockett wasn't done. "When I was defending kids who couldn't afford a lawyer, you were booking interviews. When my neighbors were struggling to keep their lights on, you were cashing checks to say the system was working just fine. So forgive me if I don't accept your lecture on what fighting for our people looks like." The applause was thunderous now, not the polite kind, but the sustained roar of collective vindication. Crockett stood up, adjusted her blazer, and delivered her final blow with surgical precision. I serve in Congress not to be famous, but to be accountable. You serve on podcasts, in studios funded by people who fear real accountability." With that, she sat back down and folded her hands. Owens looked rattled. She shuffled her notes, then glanced toward the moderator, silently begging for a change of subject. But it was too late. The tide had turned. By the end of the night, Candace Crockett and Crockett clapback were trending globally. CNN anchors replayed the exchange every hour. Even conservative pundits were forced to acknowledge the shift in tone. One tweeted, "Candace got owned, not by rage, but by receipts." That's what flipped America. Not insults, not yelling, but facts, calmness, and the unbearable weight of the truth when spoken with poise and power. Within minutes of the Howard University debate wrapping, the internet detonated. Clips of Jasmine Crockett's final line, "They don't love you for what you say, they love that you say it while being black," were everywhere. The official CNN post alone hit 3 million views within the first hour. By midnight, the total views across platforms had crossed 15 million. Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, it didn't matter. The Crockett clip was dominating. The hashtags trended globally. Crockett clapback shot to #1 on Twitter in the US and UK. Facts over fame followed close behind. TikTok creators wasted no time remixing the debate moment with viral audio, slow-motion reactions, and commentary breakdowns. Gen Z wasn't just watching. They were stitching, duetting, and turning the courtroom-style exchange into a cultural moment. The most viral soundbite, "You're selling validation, not solutions," became the centerpiece for memes mocking influencer grifters, opportunistic politicians, and even corporate PR campaigns. It was everywhere, from college campuses to cable news. Even BBC World News ran a segment titled, "American Congresswoman Delivers Viral Rebuttal on Race and Power." Meanwhile, legacy news outlets scrambled to get Crockett for interviews. MSNBC called the moment the most powerful political statement of the year. CN replayed the clip on loop. Even Fox News, though critical, couldn't ignore the moment's gravity, calling it a cultural earthquake masked as a political debate. Owens, on the other hand, went silent. Her Twitter account, normally a flurry of hot takes and retweets, remained dormant. Her media team delayed their scheduled post-debate debrief. Something had cracked. Viewers could sense it. The comment sections across social media filled with messages of praise, relief, and deep resonance. People wrote things like, "That wasn't a takedown. That was a rescue mission for the truth." And, "Crockett didn't win because she was louder. She won because she was grounded in something real." And for every viral video, there was a growing realization. The debate wasn't just entertainment. It had become a milestone. 2 days later, Harvard Law School screened the full debate during a constitutional theory seminar. Professors paused Crockett's rebuttals mid-sentence to unpack her references to Article 1, Section 8 and McGrain v. Doherty. The message wasn't lost on the next generation of legal scholars. This was what it looked like to bring constitutional clarity into cultural chaos and win. Political science departments at Stanford, Spelman, and Georgetown added the Crockett-Owens debate to their syllabi. It was being taught not just as a masterclass in rhetoric, but as a road rope for reclaiming truth in the age of performance politics. Backstage, Candace Owens' documentary crew reportedly paused filming indefinitely. Her book tour, which had been scheduled to continue into the following month, was quietly scaled back. Requests for speaking engagements slowed. Influencers who once clung to her platform began resharing Crockett's clips instead. Something had shifted, and it wasn't just public opinion, it was cultural positioning. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett's star soared. Her favorability rating surged in new national polling. She was invited on every major Sunday show, not as a pundit, but as a rising stateswoman. Trevor Noah called her a new kind of politician, one who knows the Constitution and how to keep calm while wielding it like a sword. Media analysts hailed her performance as the new gold standard in live political debate. But more importantly, activists and organizers in underserved communities saw something they had long waited for. Someone who could speak truth without rage, deliver justice without noise, and command a room without permission. Clark cracked refused to cash in on the moment. She declined book offers, turned down branded sponsorships, and told one interviewer, "This isn't a victory lap. This is a wake-up call." As headlines faded, one impact remained. Politicians across party lines, especially those who built careers on performance, began rethinking their playbooks. The influencer age had run into its first immovable object, someone with truth, credentials, and calm fury. In a political era addicted to spectacle, Jasmine Crockett reminded America what power looks like when it's prepared. And from that moment forward, no one underestimated her again. In the days that followed, the ripple effect only deepened. Several Democratic lawmakers quoted Crockett's lines in floor speeches. Facts over fame became a rallying cry on progressive podcasts and live streams. Even a few moderate Republicans admitted off record that Crockett had changed the tone of the national conversation. Political fundraisers began referencing the moment in email blasts. Activists printed it on posters. Student leaders at Howard launched a debate series in her name, not because she roasted Owens, but because she modeled the kind of advocacy people were starving for. Principled, informed, and deeply rooted in community. The Crockett moment wasn't a trending topic. It became a turning point. In the quiet aftermath of the most viral political debate of the year, Jasmine Crockett didn't gloat. She didn't spike the ball or revel in trending hashtags. Instead, she looked straight into the post-interview camera and delivered something rarely seen in modern politics: humility with purpose. "This wasn't about one-upping anyone," she said. "It was about showing that truth still matters, and that when someone shows up with talking points, you better come prepared with receipts." And the audience had already crowned the moment. The clip of her line, "You're selling validation, not solutions," became the defining quote of the debate. But Crockett didn't let it stop there. She made it teachable. "To the young people watching," she said, "especially those told they don't belong in politics unless they perform, remember this: preparation beats provocation, every time." It wasn't just advice. It was strategy, a playbook for the next generation. Harvard law students took notes. Howard freshmen replayed it again and again. Commentators across the political spectrum, even some conservatives, admitted, Crockett didn't just win the debate, she changed it. Her closing line was, "The dagger and the doctrine." They brought a megaphone. I brought a mirror. One makes noise, the other shows you who you really are. In a media landscape addicted to spectacle, Crockett offered substance. She didn't shout, she stood firm, she didn't insult, she investigated. And that approach, calm, constitutional, and cutting, echoed far beyond the walls of Howard University. This was more than a moment. It was a message. So, here's your call to action. If you believe political debate should raise the standard, if you're tired of performative outrage drowning out preparation and truth, then like this video. Subscribe to the channel. Share it with someone who still believes facts matter more than followers. Because in the end, integrity wins. And the people who change history? They don't need to be the loudest. They just need to be the most prepared.